All right, afternoon again.
Hi, good afternoon.
It's great to see many familiar faces, names as well. For those of you who may not know me, I guess it's only polite that I start off with a quick introduction. My name is Hansen. I serve as a coach developer. I also am a coach like everybody. What do I coach? I coach goalball. Goalball is a Paralympic sport for the visually impaired. I also serve as a sport and psychology coach. Like you guys, I'm also somewhat affected by the current C-19 pandemic. So I'm going to start off this session with a quick question for us to think about. I would like everybody to describe an athlete that is really coachable. Who do you have in mind? How does he or she look like? Somebody that you really enjoy coaching. You can key in your responses in the chat. What are some of the attributes of such an athlete? Those of you who just joined us, you're not late. We are thinking about an athlete that is coachable. How would he or she look like? Nice. Ask questions, willing to learn, hardworking, passionate. Thanks, Rachel. Never give up, self-motivated. Nice. Imagine if all our athletes are all self-driven, motivated, put in effort, they come for training all the time. Our life would be so much easier, isn't it?
Hello.
Hello.
I would think of my one of my shooter. I'm a shooting coach.
Okay.
So I'm think she's willing to learn. Because she was from with me from we have the program of I'm Jenny anyway. She was a primary 5 at the student. The time we did a program so-called Learn to Shoot, and from sports school, and she was selected. I think you know her. She's Martina.
Yes, we all know her.
Yeah. So she was from there, one of the first pioneer. So until now, during the earlier time, she was willing to learn. That's why she becomes somebody now. Yeah.
Okay, good. So Jenny, I have to mute you for the time being.
Yeah.
So that and I'll be admitting some more persons first. Give me a second, guys, before we move on. Okay. Guys, we don't live in the perfect world, right? And a lot of our athletes may not actually exhibit these attributes that you guys spoke about. They may not necessarily be asking meaningful questions. They may not come for training all the time. They may not dare to do the things that you ask them to do. They may not necessarily dare to take risks. And what we will try to achieve in this session is to share with you guys some strategies that will help our athletes think more in a growth mindset, such that they will be more coachable. And because they are more coachable, they will be more likely to experience success. Now, specifically, you gain an in-depth understanding about the implications of mindset on an athlete's resilience, ability to perform with confidence, and development. You will also acquire the 4 main strategies to help athletes align their thoughts and behavior with the growth mindset. Last but not least, we will also spend some time here discussing about how we coaches can align our thoughts with the growth mindset to better cope with the current C-19 pandemic. Okay, part 1, understanding mindset. By the end of this part 1, you'll be able to explain the importance of mindset. You'll be able to recognize the growth and fixed mindset. You will also be able to explain the implications of the fixed mindset. Now guys, so what is mindset? Those of you who have read this book would have found out that a belief that your traits and abilities are fixed compared to one where your qualities can be cultivated can lead you towards entirely different outcomes. Mindset, okay, is a foundation for learning and improving. It's perhaps the single most important factor in one's overall success. It's also essential to developing a healthy self-esteem. Mindset is also a key part of process-focused coaching. It is the first topic that I teach in all my psychological skills coaching programs. Process-focused coaching represents what I believe to be essential for developing resilient athletes who can excel not only in sports but in life. Now, so how does a fixed mindset and a growth mindset look like? Let's find out. Before that, let me admit the rest of the participants first. Okay, good stuff. So how does a fixed mindset athlete and a growth mindset athlete look like? They can be observed through these characteristics here. The fixed mindset is primarily focused on looking good, how he is perceived. The growth mindset, on the other hand, is concerned about getting better and better. She is inspired instead of feeling threatened by others. Specifically, the growth mindset contributes to greater effort in areas where she's lacking, the ability to bounce back from setbacks and increase confidence. The growth mindset is also associated with resilience, essential to developing a healthy self-esteem. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into the fixed mindset. We always talk about a growth mindset, but let's focus a little bit more about the fixed mindset this time around. How does the fixed mindset actually limit my ability to get better? So what if I have a fixed mindset? Now here are the 3 related behavior implications for the fixed mindset. Number 1, it has implications on the ability to cope with setbacks. This is a big one that we do not want. Okay, performance anxiety. And the third one has to do with how they perceive effort and mastery. Now, to achieve any worthwhile goals, setbacks and failures are inevitable. We are bound to make mistakes, we are bound to fail. The fixed mindset is more likely to give up when things do not go their way. Since he's more concerned about being revered and admired, he will not want to risk losing, or rather he will not want to risk exposing his weakness and to look silly. Secondly, with regards to performance anxiety, now someone in a fixed mindset is constantly worried about being judged and losing. I'm not saying that this is unique to somebody, or rather it's only unique to some people. We are all social animals. We will be concerned about how people judge us. But somebody in a fixed mindset is concerned about this constantly. Now, such thinking often snowballs into performance anxiety. Instead of being excited about competition, somebody in a fixed mindset is more likely to be overwhelmed by the pressures of competition. Third point, effort and mastery. Now, how we perceive effort is important. It's got implications with regards to whether we meet our goals or otherwise. Now, a fixed mindset athlete is likely to perceive effort as useless. They see talent as something you either have or you don't. No point putting in effort. They will likely pick activities and opponents that are easy so that they are more likely to receive praises rather than criticism. Let's just put the fixed mindset into context now. Hang on, let me admit our latecomers first. How are you guys doing? I hope all of you have your coffee with you. Let's move on. Now, not only does the fixed mindset limit one's ability to perform, it has implications on our mental health as well. Research has shown that the fixed mindset is more vulnerable to anxiety, aggression, and even depression. Understanding mindset is more important than ever against this context. More so than ever, our youth today are facing mental health challenges. If you are an athlete, a coach, or even a parent, how can you make use of sport participation to help steer somebody from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset? You'll find out more in the next part of this sharing. Now, in summary, remember that a growth and fixed mindset can lead one towards entirely different outcomes. A growth mindset is critical not only for achievement, but also for life satisfaction and mental well-being. A growth mindset sets one on the path of mastery, and this has a positive impact on how you live, learn, work, and play. Now, coaches, before we move on to the second part, we're going to, or rather, I have some questions for you guys to think about. It will help us to check for our own understanding. Let me get to give me a second, guys. I can't. Okay, coaches, can you guys go get on to menti.com and key in the code here 969841. We have some questions for you guys. Get on menti.com. These are just some questions for us to know that we know. Gustav, I see the answers coming in. Okay, good stuff. I see some mistakes. Mistakes are good. Mistakes help us to clarify and help us to learn as well. We learn from our own mistakes and somebody else's mistakes. Now, if you notice, answers C and D, they are pretty similar. C says that somebody in a fixed mindset is never concerned about winning or how others will judge him. He simply focuses on learning from his mistakes. Now, this is not entirely correct. We can't help but be in a fixed mindset sometimes. So it's not possible to be in a growth mindset all the time. Now, although we may be concerned about how we are being judged, we can choose to focus on learning, okay, and also think about who we can learn from. So this question actually gets us thinking about whether it's possible to be in a growth mindset all the time. It's actually not possible, but what is possible is to be aware when you are thinking in the fixed mindset and do switch to the growth mindset. Okay, let's look at the next question. I can't. Okay, apologies, coaches. I've encountered a little bit of issue with the Mentimeter. So I'm going to go back to our slideshow. Okay, this is a summary of what we have covered so far for the first part of the session. Now, welcome to part 2. I hope you guys are still with me. Now, the first part is about knowing. We may know what to do, but we may not always do what we know. This second part will be something you guys will be more interested in. It's about application. It's about doing. You've gained a better understanding about what mindset is and its implications from the previous module. You're now ready to equip yourself with the knowledge and strategies to help your young athlete develop resilience and a growth mindset. But first, a question for you guys. Does sport participation on its own foster the growth mindset? Give it some thought. Indeed, sport can play an extremely impactful role in the development of character and resilience. However, it takes a coach to model and intentionally teach it. Now, how can coaches influence the mindset of their young athletes? There are 4 related strategies. Firstly, we want to use more process feedback rather than feedback based on the outcome. Secondly, we want to ask more rather than simply telling. Use questions to get your athletes thinking rather than always telling them what to do. You also want to be specific with your praises. You want to encourage your athletes to learn from mistakes. Rather than being fearful of mistakes, there is no progress without mistakes. Last but not least, model the growth mindset. Now, these are the 4 related strategies to foster growth mindset. First, process feedback. What's the difference between process goals and outcome goals? And why is it important for me to know? Instead of saying you should really here's a description of the difference between outcome goals and process goals. Outcome goals are not within your direct control, whereas process goals are. Examples of outcome goals would be to qualify for the Olympics or to win the race, whereas an example of a process goal will be to come for training every session, follow through when you are shooting. Here's an example of outcome versus process feedback. Both feedback relates to an athlete's ability to communicate effectively. However, if you observe the impact on the athletes when the feedback is based on the process as compared to simply telling the athlete that his communication skills are bad. It is the same situation, guys, but when you provide a feedback based on a process or the outcome, it invites different responses. Now, here are more examples. Instead of saying you missed the target again, of course, you missed the target. Try saying, point your toes downwards when you kick the ball. Instead of saying you should really start scoring, which is again based on the outcome, ask, what are your mistakes? What can we learn from this? The third one, why do you keep making the same mistakes? you help the athlete focus better on the process if you ask them to break it down into smaller tasks. Smaller tasks are tasks that they can focus on. Now, another strategy to help our athletes develop the growth mindset is to ask more questions rather than telling. Now, am I saying that it's wrong to tell? It's not wrong to tell. What do you reckon is the most dominant coaching style in Singapore? Do coaches mainly tell young athletes what to do, or do they ask questions to probe deeper thinking? What do you guys think? Sorry guys, give me a second. Okay, where was I? Okay. What do you think is the most dominant style of coaching in Singapore? Okay, you're right. Okay, we tell more than we ask. Now, telling is associated with more with teaching, while asking is related more to coaching. Teaching is primarily a one-way interaction. The teacher is the expert and shows or tells the learner what to do. The learner either gets it right or wrong. Meanwhile, the coach asks questions and works with athletes to develop skills to think deeply and creatively in order to resolve the issues themselves. Now, here are some examples of how you can rephrase instructions from tell to ask. Instead of telling them that, you can ask, what's the best way to hold your club? Instead of saying, you should really start scoring, try, what have you learned from that will help you to shoot more accurately? Now remember, the brain that does the thinking does the learning. Using questions to deepen learning will not only help your athletes to learn faster, it has also implications on their self-awareness and confidence. Now, this is a quote from Alison Anand. She is the national coach for the Dutch hockey team, and I had the pleasure of listening to her speak at the Commonwealth Games. This is a really beautiful quote on asking rather than telling. Now, third point, what is the most common praise you hear from parents, teachers, and as coaches too? Yes, it's good job. It's somewhat become a sort of a knee-jerk reaction from parents and coaches whenever their young athletes does something worthy of acknowledgement. Now, what's the problem with good job? Well, in many ways, it's lazy praise. You're simply praising the ability, and it's likely also to promote the fixed mindset. Specifically, he or she may end up being more concerned about how she looks rather than avoiding mistakes. Now, this does not mean that we should not praise our young athletes, of course. Rather, we need to be reminded on the purpose of praise. You want to praise the actual effort that leads to learning and growth. I'll share with you some examples later. You want to be specific, the specific behavior that leads to growth. And you know, there are a lot of athletes, right, that learn and try very hard, but they may not necessarily be doing the correct thing. So we want them to make use of this specific effort, or rather spend energy on a specific effort that leads to growth. We don't want them to confuse energy with effort. Okay, give me a second, guys. There are some participants who are still waiting to get in. Now here are some examples that we can make use of to praise effective effort. Instead of simply telling them that they're awesome, we can try something more specific. Now it may take a little bit more time and planning, but it's definitely worthwhile. Instead of saying again, good job and well done, try well done. Your hard work and willingness to learn from mistakes has made a difference. Okay, I'm going to go back to the previous slide first. Now let's think about this. What's the main difference between these two? When you say your hard work and willingness to learn from your mistakes made the difference, you are not focusing on the end results. You're focusing on their behavior, their attributes. And when you do that, you're reinforcing the behaviors and attributes that you want. And when they do more of these behaviors, learn from their mistakes and get better, your chances of winning gets higher as well. Last but not least, role modeling. This is something that sometimes as coaches, even myself, I struggle with. Here are some examples of our role modeling, the growth mindset. We want to show our athletes that as you can see, I'm not really an expert in mastering the Zoom yet. Okay. You want to show your athletes about your own insecurities about learning something new, and you're going to push yourself to have a go anyways. Now, this could be making use of new technology, like what I'm trying to attempt to right now. Okay, you want to ask them for feedback also on how you could improve. You also want to be open to learning from other experts and coaches as well. Role modeling is perhaps the most important strategy to help not only our athletes, but ourselves to develop the growth mindset. Now, let's talk a little bit more about ourselves now. For this, I'm going to go to the chat. Okay, guys, I would just like to invite some responses from the coaches. To be honest, doing the slideshow earlier was somewhat of a struggle for me. I was struggling with navigating the different screens between Mentimeter and the slideshow, allowing participants to come in, muting new participants, etc., etc. So I think if I were to think the growth mindset, I would learn from this experience and get better and better. So I'd like to hear from you guys, my fellow coaches. You can key in your responses in the Zoom group chat. How can a growth mindset help us better cope with the current C-19 pandemic? Anybody? Good. Let's be a little bit more specific. Good. We want to look out for new opportunities. Very good, Kalai. We want to think about what can be done given the constraints. And I also noticed that you are training from home now. You may not be able to go to the gym, but you bring the gym home. Thank you, Victor. It helps one to be proactive, finding ways to improve oneself, and reflecting on things that we may not have done previously. Nice. Yes, Sarah, it's a good chance for us to upgrade our skills. I like what you shared, Tony. Focus on what we can do. Thanks, Aaron. Take stock on current learning. Yes, this is a good time, Yun Kwang, to review our coaching plans so that when this pandemic is over, we can coach even better. Thanks, Danny. Stop blaming. Learn from our fellow coaches. Thank you very much, Marina. Do something that I haven't been able to do before. Nice, good one. Thanks, Gerard. Work on improving our training materials. Okay, thank you, coaches. Now, whether you may or may not be aware, when we think in the growth mindset, we are inevitably focusing on things that matter and things that are within our control. Now, the fixed mindset is usually concerned about how she looks or how he looks, whether he or she will win. These are things that we do not have direct control over. We also do not have direct control over how or when C-19 will blow over, but what is it that we can control? I'm going to latch on to some of the ideas that you have shared. Okay, you can take stock on your current learning, review how you've been coaching from the past, and how you can do better. Some of you, like myself, will make use of the chance to get better with technology. We want to identify things that matter and things that we can focus on. Now, whenever we feel frustrated, whenever we feel angry, we are inevitably focusing on things that we can't control. So when we are aware, we should ask ourselves, hey, am I able to control that directly? If not, what should I be focusing on instead? What I've shared with you here is a very simple Venn diagram. It's a simple tool, but if done consistently, it helps you to refocus on what's important now, what's within your control, and it helps you to refocus on the growth mindset whenever we are in the fixed mindset. So guys, whenever you're feeling stressed, make use of this simple tool to refocus. It can help you to redirect your thoughts and also your emotions. Thank you, Raylene. Yes, we want to try our best. Now, in summary, what we have learned so far is to make use of process instead of outcome feedback. Ask more rather than simply telling. This helps to deepen the athlete's level of thinking. Thirdly, we want to praise effort and learning. We help athletes view mistakes as opportunities for learning rather than simply judgments on their abilities. Last but not least, we adults need to get a grip of our emotions as well. With that, I've come to the end of the presentation.